he said, I think really the only mistakes are the ones that you just don't admit and own up to and ask for forgiveness. And so maybe as a country, like if we look bigger than that, we made a mistake.
Yeah.
But if we just own up to it, that was a mistake. These are the things that we do when we make a mistake. That to me is a better solution than no, don't show people that we made a mistake. Just pretend, maybe they'll forget.
What up? It's Dramos, and this is the recap, of course, as I do each and every week, breaking down some of the biggest headlines from this last week. My guest helping me do so on today's show is a singer and guitarist from the band Making Movies, whose new album, Sopa, is available everywhere right now. Enrique Chi will be hopping on the show in just a little bit. But man, I just have to quickly get something off of my chest. Now listen, it has been a roller coaster ride of emotions this week, as it often is. And no, I'm not just talking about our current political climate. I am talking about one of my favorite treats as a young toddler, the classic ice cream, Choco Taco, is no longer going to be available. Yes, Klondike has announced that they are discontinuing the Choco Taco in order to focus on some of their other ice cream treats that are apparently doing far better than the Choco Taco, and they need to free up some of that production time for those other items. A part of my childhood has officially died this week, and I just wanted to share that with you. And I'm sorry to all the future generations who will never be able to enjoy a Choco Taco on a hot summer day. Now, with that in mind, obviously, we are going through a lot of nonsense in this world, and it never stops. Beyond the Choco Taco, we have the orange cheese doodle that is Donald Trump. And man, it seems like he's starting to get back out there on that campaign trail, and a 2024 bid for presidency seems like it could be a very real thing. Now, I don't want to tackle this by myself. I no longer have the energy. So I'm going to bring on today's guest to help me break down some of these headlines. Now, my guest today is the singer and guitarist of the band Making Movies, whose new album, Sopa, is available everywhere right now. Enrique Chi, how you feeling, my bro?
I'm feeling great, man. I'm home for a split second before getting back out playing concerts, which has been amazing.
Oh man, I love to hear that. I definitely wanna get into all that you guys have going on. I mean, obviously we have the new album. You guys have been playing a ton of shows, so I wanna dive into all that. But first, if it's cool with you, I want to get your take on a few current events from this last week.
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so do you want to start on a more serious note or maybe a little bit lighter note? I'm gonna do dealer's choice here.
I like this. Let's start lighter because
okay.
I get serious quick, so it won't take long to turn it into serious.
Perfect, man. Well, let's talk about the world of social media and Instagram, right? As much as this is a part of our lives, it also is, meant to be for entertainment purposes. But, people have a lot invested in it, and we've been seeing a lot of backlash over Instagram's new updates. And I don't know if you've seen the meme that's been going around where they've been saying, make Instagram again. That's been floating around because they're basically trying to adopt a bunch of stuff from TikTok, right? Where obviously the reels have become the priority, but also where just random ass people start showing up on your feed that you are not following. So I wanna hear your perspective. I mean, have you been paying attention to what's been going on Instagram and kind of your take on this whole adjustment they've made?
Oh man, Instagram, social media, this whole world, this is insanity to me.
Yeah.
It's amazing how something, this technology, this ability to communicate,
right,
has changed our lives. And I don't think I'm not a contrarian into thinking that every development is negative. I
sure.
think it's part of the beauty, part of why we're facing social hurdles right now is because we actually can see each other. Mm-hmm. Like, wait a second, people are having that conversation. Like in Panama, there's protests happening right now.
Yeah,
I can see it in real time. Like that, right. The power of that has obviously been expressed. But I think it's Instagram and Meta and the whole bit is particularly infuriating because it just seems like they are trying to not go extinct. Like the churn of social media is so is so aggressive that they're trying to hang on, to profits, and so they're making changes based on that, on trying to get more people using their applications and not really on human communication or growing our ability to share ideas with one another. And it's like, I wish there was a social media. It's almost like we need to like break up the model. Maybe it's like a not-for-profit social media platform or something that's like is not based on board of directors and investors' profit margins, but on actually furthering the human conversation. It's amazing you and I can speak like this. Right. It's amazing we can do an IG live and connect with someone around the world. Mm-hmm. Now let's maybe keep the designing platforms to grow as a species versus sell stuff. Yeah, that would be nice. But yeah. So I don't know. It's infuriating. We had to drop an old account that we had to drop with 22,000 followers. We had to start a new one recently because we couldn't get a hold of their support team. Nobody would respond to our questions. We were having glitches. And had to start a brand new account. So if you follow us, follow makingmovies.world on Instagram, and we're there. We're relatively active, but yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, I mean, it's infuriating how necessary it is to a degree, right? Because I'm when you're saying that you had to start a new account, my stomach turns almost, right? Because the thought of having to start over, which sounds so ridiculous. Like it's like we're just creating another page, but because especially as a creator, even if you're not a social media content creator per se, so much of how your fans or your followers or how you build your brand, it is attached to social media, right? And I love the point that you brought up about how it allows us to have these conversations in real time, right? Talking about the protests and all these different things. And I think particularly in today's world, it definitely has removed the veil from a lot of the politics and things like that, right? It's allowed us to have a more first person view into what the hell is going on, right? And as much nonsense is out there, I think it's also kind of maybe pointed out some of the BS that we get from mainstream media as well, right? So on that note, social media is incredibly positive, right? But on the flip side of it, to your point, it is here to make money, right? That is their number one goal at the end of the day. I think everything else was just kind of like a happy accident for them, right? The fact that it was also able to kind of connect so many people in these ways, right? And the money is always going to be the inherent goal. So yeah, they are trying to keep up with TikTok. I mean, and I guess it's got to scare them when you think about Facebook, right? Because that was so relevant and so powerful for such a long time. And now it's become a platform for our parents. And I think they kind of see Instagram getting to that place pretty quickly.
That's exactly what's happening. That's exactly what's happening. They see that. And I agree. And, the thing that's troubling to me is that because the metric by which they sell their product is user data, user time and user data. Right. Then they're incentivized to keep feeding you things that keep you there. Right. And the curse of that is if some outlandish news claim that is obviously fiction to a discerning eye, right, that catches someone's attention, which is likely to, right? The more outlandish, the more it would catch your attention to cause you to watch it. Yeah, you watch. We all slow down to watch car accidents, right? Like that's the reality of things. So even if it's a news article that's complete BS, you may slow down to experience it, the BS, and then the algorithm is incentivized to feed you more of that because it caused you to slow down. And that's how you create these communities where people are just indoctrinated in complete BS. Like it's like, oh my God, how are we in 2022? And you can read accurate information at the tip of your finger, and yet there's folks who are duped by a wild conspiracy theory and all buy into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Because that is like this is like, I think the backlash that Facebook was getting during the election, where there was a lot of misinformation and they were allowing it because the people were going so crazy back and forth in the comments. It was making them have more action on the website, right? So for them, you're keeping people on the site for longer periods of time. and that is profitable. That's what they want. They're going to possibly see more ads and all the above, right? But on the flip side of that, they're literally doing a disservice to democracy as we know it, right? And man, this like steers away from completely kind of the original kind of point of this, but I think it in my opinion, I'd love to hear your take. It kind of comes to the point where it's like there has to be some sort of regulation, because obviously you can't think that social media is going to police itself when they're a business and they're just trying to drive more and more profits, right? You need some sort of outside force policing them from being harmful, because as much good as we've talked about as they can do, they also can cause so much harm, like we've seen kind of with January 6th and all that kind of stuff, different protests that turn violent.
Absolutely. I mean, we developed cars, and we realized that people die if you just let people drive 100 miles an hour with no seatbelt. And over the course of a long time, you develop things like, why don't we put in seatbelts and traffic lights, and then less people die? Yeah. I feel like social media has to get that, but maybe because the technology is evolving so quickly. Yeah. We need desperately for the seatbelt. Like a car has been a car for about 100 years. Right. Kind of more or less the same. Sure. This technology, you wait 100 days, and the algorithm is a new animal. Right. It's a whole different field. So we need those seatbelts, brakes, stop signs, and stoplights. We need that ASAP. Like we need it so urgently. Yeah. Because the thing may evolve so quickly that it becomes unstoppable. Now I sound like a doomsday. That's why I framed it's like it's gonna be on Tuesday. It's like the robots will eat us. Right. I'll tell you a story. Like this is some Terminator. So we did a live stream. Our band has a project called Americana, and it's both our festival that we curate, and it's a media output project. Some of it was born in the pandemic, because we're like, how do we convey our message if we can't play concerts? So we made a documentary film. We do radio shows. It's all about celebrating Black, Indigenous, immigrant, and Latino voices in American music, and kind of elevating them. It's been super fun. Well, we had this live stream prepared. We had Cedric Burnside and Los Lobos and Flora Toloache and all this stuff. And Facebook was like, love the message. We're going to help you. Facebook human beings within Facebook. We're like, we're going to help make this a success. Yeah. So they unlocked like the magic sauce formula or whatever. So when we went live, we started to grow followers. We were at 5,000 people watching the show and in real time, and we're excited about it. So we knew we were going to get to like 1 million views and all this other stuff if we just were able to continue the show. Right. The show got pulled down, blocked, because the bot that they programmed on behalf of Warner Brothers thought that the Los Lobos video performance, live in studio pandemic recorded performance that we were airing was actually owned by Eric Clapton's Crossroads live album that is on Warner Brothers. So the bot misrecognized this performance that Los Lobos was doing as being owned by Warner Brothers. Right. So having misrecognized it, pulled our whole live stream. There's 5,000 people watching. There's 30, 40 humans worked on it for months to make this thing happen. Fundraisers, sponsors, all this. And it gets pulled down. And we're on the phone with multiple humans at Facebook on a Saturday night who are trying to correct the system, and they couldn't override the bot. The bot had more override credentials than they did. Wow. That's scary. That's 2 years ago. Right. That's 2 years ago. Right. That, and it is hard not to sound like a doomsday person, but also like you kind of have to be in today's world, because if you're not, you're going to be asleep at the wheel essentially, right? Like how long were people talking about how dangerous the things Donald Trump was doing, like, and his ideas were, right? And then nobody's taking it seriously. And then January 6th happens. And like, we're lucky that January 6th actually didn't end up worse than it actually did, right? Like, because they were close to getting to, the vice president and other members of Congress, right? We're lucky that it didn't get that bad, but that's what happens when you try to sweep it under the rug and just try and tell people like, oh, you're being crazy. It'll never happen. It could never happen. And then guess what? It ends up happening one day. And that's the thing, the kind of balance I guess you have to find between being a doomsday person, but also being a realist. I agree with that completely. I agree with that. Like you just nailed it. And I think that's another hot topic issues, everything that's happening with the January 6th hearings.
Yeah.
And looking back at that moment in history and going, holy, that was dangerously close to an explosive moment in the history of democracy.
Right.
I mean, it's right now it's like a flag post, like a signpost, like we will learn about that in history 100 years from now. But it could have been like the moment that everything blew up for a bit. You know what I mean? It almost did that. Like if there would have been American politicians murdered that day, which was that close to happening, we would be living in a different nation right now. And anyways, that stuff is that is crazy, and it is amazing to me that there have not been any real ramifications for the parties involved.
Yeah, well, that was one of the other things I wanted to kind of get into, because now after these hearings, right, you're having the Department of Justice and Merrick Garland, talking a little bit more strongly and in regards to actually something possibly happening to Donald Trump. You actually had Merrick Garland saying that everyone and anyone who is criminally responsible for efforts to overturn the 2020 election will be held accountable, right? And he confirmed, that the former president won't be immune. And in his own words, quote, "We will hold accountable to anyone who is criminally responsible for attempting to interfere with the legitimate, lawful transfer power from one administration to the next," right? So those are strong words, right, coming from the Department of Justice. Now, historically, of what we've seen over the last few years, it seems like Donald Trump finds a way to get around anything, and people are too scared to actually do something. But I guess, you're watching this, you're following it just like I am. I mean, I'd love to kind of hear, what is your take on it? I mean, how much of it are you buying? How much of it do you think is just for show to make it seem like, we're not just a bunch of people too scared to actually hold a former president accountable? What do you think?
That's a great question. I have a lot of thoughts about it, but I hadn't formed. I have a lot of thoughts about what's happening, but I hadn't formed an answer to that question until you asked it the way you just did. Are we actually a nation of people that can hold a powerful, wealthy, influential, or influencer accountable? Are we a nation that does that? I'm not sure we're a nation that does that.
Yeah,
I feel like we're a nation we've built a society where power and wealth override morality,
right?
So I think there's people involved. I guess maybe this would be my answer. I think there's individuals involved who have the end goal of moving justice forward and bringing the right things to light, so that justice can actually be executed on this circumstance, which I think is putting people in jail. I think Donald Trump deserves to be in jail for a multitude of sins.
Sure.
But that's my opinion. But I think there's people involved doing that. Now, whether the system is designed to actually succeed at that, I feel like maybe not.
Yeah.
Does that sound pessimistic?
No, I mean, I think, unfortunately, it sounds more realistic than pessimistic, right? Like, because it seems like America, which is probably the greatest propaganda machine in the history, right? The idea of America and the American way and the American dream, all of these different things are that are sold around the world, right? America is great at PR. It's great at giving propaganda of being this elite country that has it all figured out, right? And everybody else sort of needs to bow down to. But so with that in mind, I wonder, would the powers that be okay with tarnishing the American image by putting a former president in jail, right? Because then you are really, signing the fact that America has been asleep at the wheel, and that America, with the quote unquote greatest constitution man has ever known, still failed, right? Because essentially democracy, failed at that point, because you're having somebody who is holding the highest position of power in this country and is breaking all of the rules, essentially, right? And to me, I wonder if the powers that be would be okay with that stain, right? And then also, you hear about tradition and it's the tradition to not prosecute a former president or something like that, right? Like, and there's different sort of variables that go into that, that I feel like, unfortunately, would possibly make people a little bit fearful to be the one to prosecute him and put him in jail,
Man, I think you just nailed it. I think that I think there might be an attitude of like, if we just move past this quietly,
Right.
that the PR story would be better.
Yeah.
Whether justice aside, et cetera. Like, and since this nation does live off of that mythos and mystique around it,
Yeah.
then I could see real conversations by our intelligent and maybe even well-intentioned people saying preserving the PR
Right.
of this nation. That's not how they would say it, but preserving the message or
Yeah.
the whatever
Integrity, whatever you want to. Yeah.
is it proposing that has a value greater than the value of putting Donald Trump in prison, which, damn, I don't agree with that. I think it'd be better to be honest. I think I think maybe the best way to, I'm stealing words from one of our mentors. We had a chance to work with Ruben Blades on our previous album, and he gave us advice in many ways. Some he sat down and intentionally gave it to us as advice. Right. And others, he invited us to experience how he works. He had us sit next to him in Mexico City at his press junket. Mm-hmm. And of course, nobody was interested in talking to us. They wanted to talk to the legendary artist, Ruben Blades, Ruben Blades, and but he said something profound there. He said, I think really the only mistakes are the ones that you just don't admit and own up to and ask for forgiveness. And so maybe as a country, like, if we look bigger than that, we made a mistake. Yeah. But if we just own up to it, that was a mistake. These are the things that we do when we make a mistake. That to me is a better solution than no, don't show people that we made a mistake. Just pretend, maybe they'll forget,
Yeah. but the sad thing is, we've been here before in different ways, right? Like, slavery was swept under the rug, essentially, right? And it has never truly been, like, the sins for slavery have never truly been, like, amended for, right? We still see remnants of the problems related to never actually dealing with the repercussions of slavery. And to me, it's crazy to think that this mindset still exists. Like, oh, we're just going to be quiet and sweep it under the rug, and then nobody's going to notice. They'll forget about it eventually. It's like, no, we've seen what happened when you don't deal with things head on, right? And I think, in this country, a lot of the people who are the most sort of, unapologetic and are flying their Trump flags and all these different things, they love when they see a place like Puerto Rico, having to have their governor step down because of corruption, or in South America or Central America, right? That's what they hold against immigrants coming into this country. You guys have a country with corrupt politicians, and that's why you have to come over here, because you guys can't get your stuff together. And the irony is that we here in this country have corruption happening at the highest level, just like anywhere else, right? And I think that if they were to, arrest Donald Trump and put him in jail, a lot of these people's, ideas of what America is would just come crumbling to the ground.
I agree with that. And I think it's actually the consequence of, to be even more philosophical, of a cultural shift that was led a lot by education, to really lop off history from a group of people. Yeah. Like an American, the American mindset is based on a very naive and short-term look at history, and it was intentionally done when they adopted the Prussian educational system. Was built on that, because they realized Prussia had succeeded at something. They grabbed a nation of immigrants and they made them create nationalist ideas and a nationalist identity by stop teaching history, because then everybody realizes that we all very different. If you start talking about right now and how we're all a part of this one thing. Well, when that was adopted a couple hundred years ago, we are now, I think, seeing the ramifications of that, where folks who have a longer legacy of being American are completely detached from their immigrant stories. Yes. Though they have huge immigrant stories, beautiful, robust cultural traditions that their families have carried for thousands of years, that maybe they even practice and they don't realize they're practicing thousand-year-old tradition. They only see the world from the eyes of the last 100 or 200 years. Yep. And are detached from reality. Well, that is like something like, it's like a human being unrooted, like that doesn't have deep roots into the earth to be able to weather a storm. Yep. And so I feel like Donald Trump, to continue this this analogy of a plant without roots. Donald Trump is just like a mildly successful wind. And if you have a bunch of plants without roots, they get swept into it.
Yeah.
But you have folks with roots, you go, wait a second, this sounds like a liar. We've had liars in history before.
Yep.
All nations have seen this. And this looks like another one of those.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I think that's a great point. It's the design of this country, you know, and education being such a huge component in that, right? And we see it's getting even worse now, where like they are claiming that if you teach, you know, real history of America, you are somehow a racist, that it's making white people feel uncomfortable, right? And so and it's painful to even speak those words because it's just utterly ridiculous. But, you know, it does show you the importance that the powers that be recognize that, you know, you can only, you know, want to educate people to a certain point and teach them your history rather than giving them the real thing, because then they'll actually begin to have questions and maybe push back against certain ideas that are kind of being shoved down their throat to a degree by the powers that be. But switching gears to something positive, you know, we saw, and this is more of kind of a silly thing, but I think it's great, especially with somebody like yourself who's in music and a Latin artist. You had former President Obama, who makes his summer playlist every single year. And on that playlist, he actually had Bad Bunny on there for this summer, the song Ojitos Lindos, right? So I thought, to me, obviously, I don't think Bad Bunny needs any more press. I think he's doing okay on his own. And yeah, and I don't think I would look to Obama to be my taste maker per se when it comes to music. But I look at this as a Latino and proud of just how far our culture has come, and the ability of somebody like a Bad Bunny to figure out a way to make it palatable for the masses, but also still keep his sort of moral and cultural integrity while doing so. And that's kind of how I view moments like this one. I mean, for you as a musician, does it have any sort of effect on you seeing something like this?
It absolutely does. I reference it often. Like I talk about a pre-Bad Bunny world and a post-Bad Bunny world, where you know. I mean, that's what I think about with music. My band has been around for 12 years, and we grew up in the Midwest. Where I'm from Panama. So Panama is we call it reggae, but that drum beat.
Right. The birthplace of reggaeton, basically.
Yeah, it becomes reggaeton in Puerto Rico, you know, and like it's that rhythm is ingrained in our culture. And so we're playing rock and roll music with those rhythms in it.
Sure.
And the world was so different when we started. I mean, part of why we made the Americana message is we would play Americana venues or try to, and get rejected. We actually had one venue that we had gotten booked. We were opening up for Hooray for the Riff Raff, and we were doing a tour with her. And this one Americana venue kept telling us, that kind of music doesn't work in our venue. This is like 2017. Like, it's not like 1943.
Right.
We don't do that kind of thing around these parts. You know, like that. And the way I found out that this venue was trying to kick us off the show is that the owner of the venue came to me after I said and said, I need to apologize to you. And they apologized. He's like, I tried to kick you off the show. Y'all were great. Because I didn't think the Spanish music was going to land with my venue. I'm like, Spanish music is a part of American culture, you know, like through and through, for so many reasons, for so many ways. So Bad Bunny has busted that wide open, where people who maybe have no real tangible connection to Latin America are comfortable listening to a Bad Bunny song in Spanish and loving it. And I think that is great. And I think that he has tapped into a cultural nerve, and like many others before, and I believe this, and maybe this is a message too, like from a Latin American born in Panama. Spanish is my first language. From Latino to a Latino, and to whomever may be listening that comes from a culture like ours. Being Latino is such a blend. It's so the mestizaje, the mixture of culture is so complex.
Right.
Without going into the whys, but it just is. And I think if you compare a DNA chart from a Latino person to most people in the world, you're going to find very few places in this world that can compete with the diversity. Like my chart was like from Vietnamese to different parts of Africa to European to English, British to the Iberian Peninsula, of course, because of the Spanish and all this stuff. So we carry kind of like a taste of the world in our DNA. And I think that that gives us a position in this moment where the whole globe needs to think about things like climate change and certain, the way that we're handling resources, the way we handle human rights. We have a special role in that because that diversity in our literal blood, in our DNA, gives us a way to tap in and be able to communicate to lots of people. I feel that in my daily life. Like I feel comfortable talking to a white American person, a Black person, an immigrant person from some part of the world I've never been, because I'm an immigrant, because I've lived in America. I can talk to a white person because I have an American grandmother, because I have Afro roots from my on my mom's side, from my grandfather. I feel comfortable talking to all these people. Our art, our messages, our things can do the same thing. So that to me is like what Bad Bunny is certainly tapped into, and what I think is important for us as Latinos to do is to realize, tap into that. We have an ability to communicate, not just to English and Spanish people. I think a bigger picture sense, because Bad Bunny is huge globally.
Right. I think you're touching on a lot of things that I personally feel, and I think is why at moments like this, I feel such a sense of pride, because I think, like you said, the bigger picture to it all is, maybe you have a demographic out there who is not Latino, who maybe white Americans, and they fall in love with Bad Bunny's music, and maybe it changes their perspective of Latinos, right? Maybe it opens their mind a bit to embracing a culture that's not their own, and it makes us all maybe have a little bit less hate in our hearts, right? For something that is different, right? And I think the same way with the explosion that we've seen in this country with K-pop, I think the music has always been such a great sort of bridge and pathway towards acceptance, and when you can appreciate something about somebody's culture, it allows you to kind of maybe change your mind a little bit towards some of the negative perceptions that many of us grow up with, depending on where it is that we grew up in, as far as geographically, or the families that we were born into as well. So I see it as a bigger conversation, just like you do.
Yeah, I do, exactly, and that's why I play music. You described exactly why I play music, and why our band started a not-for-profit organization to do music education, because of that. Because music levels the playing field, and it allows us to kind of hear other people's stories, and it's kind of a empathy vehicle like none other. Because the act of enjoying a song, like if you hear a song about falling in love, you're tapping into someone else's emotion. You don't have to be in love in that moment to love the song. Your mother doesn't have to have just passed to cry at the song that someone wrote about their mother just passing. You're experiencing empathy, and to me, that's why I'm happy to devote my life to music, because it's an empathy generating machine.
Right. That's a fact. I mean, let's talk about your band. I mean, I think I really am fascinated by, I think, the Latin sort of alternative movement that's happening right now, right? Because you're seeing so many bands and artists mixing various genres of music together, and then infusing the Latin element, infusing their Latin roots in it, and really making the genre of rock specifically their own, right? Which has traditionally, rock music has for a long time been very stale, because it was the same old characters, same people who look, who are basically white guys. That's really what it was. Let's call it what it was. Rock music, for a long time, the bigger artists that you saw on television, there wasn't a great deal of diversity, right? But I think this new generation, be it the fusion of hip hop and rock, be it the fusion like you guys are doing with Latin and alternative sounds, I think it's incredible. I mean, I think, how did you guys kind of come to forming this sort of sound, and was it intentional of sort of giving rock a bit of a different flavor than it traditionally had?
It definitely was intentional. I grew up, Panama has a bit of a rock scene, and my dad loved collecting the vinyl. It loves still, just classic rock music.
Yeah.
But in Panama, if you can't dance to the music, then it doesn't have much value.
Sure.
For the non-rock and roll population, which is a small subset,
Right.
the rock and roll fans. And so in my house, my mom always listened to Latino music. She wanted to dance to merengue, salsa.
Right.
And my papa, he wanted to hear rock and roll, the Beatles and Pink Floyd and all that stuff. And I always heard something linking the two, or maybe I just wanted to make my mom and dad happy, like every kid does. But I always could hear a bridge.
Yeah.
And Ruben was actually one of those bridges. Like you can hear in his music some elements of rock and roll in the arrangements and the aesthetic of it a little bit. But I thought I could sense that there was something linking the energy. That there's a bit of a sensual energy to rock and roll, and we think of Willie Colon, New York salsa, all that has that a little bit of that kind of grit to it, and that grime and that rough around the edges.
Right.
It's not very polished music in a way, and
even the visuals. Not to cut you off, but even Willie Colon's branding, right, was very felt very rock, like him in the mugshots and things like that. To me, that wasn't something a salsero was doing at that time,
It was rock. Yeah, exactly. It had that teeth to it, man. That's why I love that music so much. And I could hear that link, and I thought, man, what Willie Colon does on the trombone, not so different from Jimmy Page and his fuzz guitar pedals or whatever it is. Yeah. It's a potency that comes to it. So we started to explore this, and what's cool is that we came to kind of a point of understanding, realizing that salsa music specifically, like the New York salsa thing, comes out of Cuban and Puerto Rican music and immigrants in New York, that whole scene, and the rock and roll thing that comes up from New Orleans to Memphis, and it's like this little soup of human beings there.
Yeah.
There's multiple connection points if you go far enough back, to the point that even like the Bo Diddleys of rock and roll, early rock and roll people, that rhythm he plays on the guitar, the story is that he went to Cuba, he heard the rhythm and he brought it on the guitar. So dink, 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 dink. That's what a salsero does. Right. That's what Mark Anthony does on stage when he's opening up a rumba-centered song. It's the same thing. Yeah. And so we just live in that connective tissue between the two.
I love that. So I mean, let's end talking about the new album Sopa. I mean, we off mic, you were kind of giving me a bit of a breakdown with the title, because you spell it XOPA, and I wasn't familiar with kind of the slang around it, and you were kind of breaking that down for me. So talk about the title of the album and what kind of people can expect from this project from you guys.
To me, it's a reintroduction of the band to the world. We've been together for 12 years, but a lot shifted in the last 3 or 4 years. We introduced a new drummer to the band, and the pandemic made us really look at each other and go, why are we going to do this? We've done this for 10 years. What are the reasons that make us continue? And it got down to the things we've been talking about, all conversation. That's why, because music is a vehicle to get a deeper understanding. And that's what the record's about. And so it felt like a metamorphosis, a rebirth for us. And in Panama, everybody says, instead of saying, hey, ¿qué pasó, brother? How are you? They flip it. They go, ¿qué sopa? Hola, hermano, ¿qué sopa? And that XOPA, they text that, they put it on IG or whatever. That's how they'll write it, XOPA. So it's a way for us to both celebrate our roots from Panama, and to accept this reality that, like, hey, this is a reintroduction to the band. We're not a brand new band. And when you see us live, you'll be like, oh, that doesn't sound like a new band. It sounds like a band that's worn in, because we've been on the road together for 12 years. We know each other. We're family, but the spirit is new. The focus is new. And that's what that kind of means for us.
I love that, man. I love that. So what can people expect? I mean, anything you want to push people to that you guys got coming up? I mean, give the social again, but any tours, things like that coming up that they can check you guys out at.
So makingmovies.world is the website. It's the handle for IG. It's we do have a Facebook, Twitter. It's Making Movies HQ. But I think IG is maybe the most we're on there maybe the most often. But as we enter in August, we're doing some festivals. At the end of the month, we play at Ruido Fest in Chicago. We're excited about that. We curate our own festival in Kansas City. We're bringing members of Los Lobos. Mireia, singer Flor de Toloache, and a bunch of other folks to Kansas City to celebrate this music and this cross-pollination of culture. And then we hit the road. And I know we're going to be on the West Coast. We're doing another LA play. I think we're going to do a screening of our documentary and then play a concert. And we'll keep us out on the road through the West Coast. We'll be in Texas in November. And all that you can find out by hitting makingmovies.world. And that's what we're up to.
I love it, bro. Well, listen, man, if you ever make it out to the East Coast, the New York area, definitely drop me a line. I'd love to come see you guys, check it out, check out a show and have some of these conversations in person as well, man. I've enjoyed getting your perspective on this stuff.
Yeah, man, I've totally enjoyed it. And we'll be back in New York. We played New York right before we dropped the album. I'm sure we'll hit it back here in the next 6 months or so.
Love it, bro. I appreciate you hopping on the show.
Thank you, man. Take care, brother.
Man, big shout out to Enrique for hopping on the show. Make sure you check out his band, Making Movies. Man, I really enjoyed that conversation. I think they're doing some incredible things with their music, so definitely worth checking out. Now, with that in mind, man, let's end on some positivity in the form of a positive quote. Now, this quote comes to us from Audre Lorde, and to me, it is very much in line with the conversation I was having with Enrique about music and its ability to bring us together and to cross some of those barriers and allow us to appreciate each other's cultures and allow us to appreciate the differences that make us all incredibly unique and amazing human beings. Now, this quote is, "It is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences." And I love this quote because it's something that I firmly believe in. I believe all of us have something unique and absolutely incredible and beautiful to share with this world, right? But it's our inability to appreciate things that are different or people that are different than what we grew up around. It's our inability to appreciate them that makes us have all of the division that we see in this world right now. It is that fear of somebody or something that looks different that allows hate to begin to stir and violence to eventually happen, right? And this country was built on the idea that people of different cultures and backgrounds could all come together and create a better world, right? The entire country is founded upon immigrants, with the exception of the indigenous people. Nobody is actually from here, yet the media loves to divide us. Society loves to divide us. Culture, politics, all of the above. Many of us are brought up thinking that different is bad. And if we just sat down and began to appreciate each other's differences and looked at those differences as something to be valued rather than something to be feared, I think this world and this country specifically would be in far better shape. So that is my challenge to you. Look at something different, somebody different than yourself, and appreciate all that you can learn from that person and their differences and vice versa. Now, with that said, thank y'all so much for tuning into this week's episode. Again, big shout out to Enrique for Making Movies, for being my guest. And we'll be back next week to break it all down. Until then, stay safe, and I'll talk to y'all soon. Bye.